Now, before I get into that specific area of technique, however, I do want to go over what to do when my opponent has a more intermediate attack option. In other words, they haven't actually gotten to my legs yet, but they may have certain type of holds on me initially. I want to be able to defend against that hold. So they haven't gotten my leg yet, but they've perhaps tied up my head or tied up my arms, and I need to be able to get away from that position. One, so I can reattack, and two, if I'm controlling that position, they're not going to be able to attack me very effectively. Now, a common position that one needs to learn to defend against is a simple collar tie. Now, there's a couple ways of approaching this. The first is, there's a notion that it's much easier to prevent an attack or prevent a hold or make it more difficult for your opponent to get a secure hold than it is to try to get rid of that hold once they've actually secured it effectively. So, for example, if I approach Colby and he ties up in a collar tie with me, he can get me in a pretty secure position. However, I can make that more difficult by noticing him as he comes up to tie up, bringing my shoulder in towards my back part of my jawline here, or under my ear. Why? Because if my head is out, Colby's got a great target to grab my neck. However, if, as Colby is approaching me with his hand, I bring my shoulder up, he has much less of an area to grab, and it's not going to be as effective because he's going to get his best grip across my neck. So, when Colby ties up with me, I'm going to try to beat him to the punch so that he only gets pretty much on the back of my head or around my ear, and that's not nearly as secure as if he has my neck. So, as I approach Colby and he ties up, I block. Notice this grip that Colby has, and I'm pushing up with my shoulder here, is much less secure than this grip that he has. Again, Colby ties up, I want to block. I want to make it more difficult as opposed to his good grip here. Colby ties up, I block, as opposed to allowing him a good grip to my neck. Now, one little fine point in terms of developing that to be even more effective. I want you to notice, if I just bring my shoulder up to my ear here, or underneath my ear towards the back of my jawline, it makes it more difficult for him to grab my neck. But if I bring it up and also slightly forward, instead of having a straight shot through, if he can kind of dig his arm through and down, I make it a little bit more difficult because he's got to get his arm not just through the gap this way, but because my shoulder's slightly in front, it's blocking his access to get my neck even more. So when I bring my shoulder up, and it depends on which side he's attacking, I'm going to be popping it up like this, depending upon which side he's going to attack. And also, I'm not just bringing it up exactly laterally, and certainly not back. Certainly not back. This is okay. A little forward is better. So, when I move my shoulder up, I want to keep the shoulder slightly forward as opposed to just straight up laterally, and certainly not back, because Colby will have much better access if it's back, a little bit better access if it's straight. He's got less access if my shoulder comes slightly forward as it comes up. And if you can prevent your opponent from getting that secure tie in the first place, it's much easier to get that tie off. Once more. Right up in here. Again. Right up in here. I notice as Colby is approaching me, he reaches up, I bring my shoulder up. And a little drill to practice is just having your partner or opponent reach up on each side, and I try to block. And Colby can also kind of mix it up a little bit so that I'm just practicing moving and responding to his initiation of the tie. But as you can imagine, it's much easier for me to defend against that if he doesn't have a good grip in the first place than when he has a really strong grip, because I've done nothing except expose my neck as I approached him. Now, if my opponent does get a good collar tie, and when I say a good collar tie is his elbow is somewhat bent, so it's preventing me from coming in Same time, it's not outstretched here where I can pop up. He's got a good collar tie here, and he's securing my head and my neck fairly effectively. One of my favorite type techniques in this position is to block the wrist. And when I say block the wrist, I'm pinning it to my shoulder because I don't want him to be able to back out. I want to control this. I'm not going to grab it. I'm just going to pin it to my shoulder, sandwich his wrist between my palm and my shoulder. And you'll notice my arm here is coming out and down at about a 90-degree angle. I'm going to put the back of my forearm basically at his elbow joint in this direction here. And I want you to watch as I post, and even if he's very tight, and it doesn't matter how tight he is because I have tremendous mechanical advantage in this position. He's facing away from me right now. Notice too, I'm upright. I'm not down here. Colby will tell you I have less pressure here than I do when I'm upright. So even though I'm close and my hips are high, I'm actually in good position. You'll notice Colby is facing away. Turn into me, Colby. That's very difficult at this point. I much prefer this type of a technique where I can control my opponent than trying to, for example, shuck through. There are various techniques that you can use to get out of this type of situation that I don't think are quite as effective, or sometimes just kind of powering through and trying to get your opponent's grip off. I'm not going to review those type of techniques because frankly, at least for me, I've found it most effective just to always go to this one particular technique simply because the mechanical advantage is so much. And again, even for me being a 115-pound competitor, I can get people that are significantly heavier in a lot of stress physically with this type of a move. So Colby ties up fairly tight here, and I'm not going to get out. I wasn't able just to pull out. I trap it, and I want you to notice my weight goes down and up in an arc. And as I do, this arm follows that arc too. And I'm upright. And I'm going to come to a 2-on-1 most typically. I can get rid of it if I wish. Although if I've got a secure grip on my opponent, which is an advantage, I probably wouldn't want to give that up. So Colby is here pretty tight. He can be very tight. Be real rigid, Colby. I just post it. Notice now when I come through, I'm not lifting up with my arm. My hip is low and underneath, and I'm just coming up with my hip. Okay, my hips are underneath me. I'm not trying to lift it up with my arm or my back as I come through. It's just an arch. Just an arc. Pin it and arch through to this position here. 2-on-1, head inside. Now, if Colby begins to back up when I do this, and his arm starts to straighten out, at that point, this technique is not going to work as well. It's predicated on me keeping roughly a 90-degree angle here. And if I were really jammed up here, it's kind of hard to get as well. So I've got to be able, in my fighting and my sort of pushing back and forth here, to maintain this angle here. If he starts to back up too much, I've got to start coming into him to continue to maintain that angle. Roughly a 90-degree angle I'm trying to maintain. If I'm here and he starts pushing back, and I can't get that angle from here, we had a technique in the first module on setups where we just brought the arm over. So if they do straighten out their arm because they're retreating and you cannot get that angle back, you just throw the arm as we did in the first module on setups. So it's crucial I can maintain this. I feel this here. If Colby comes into me, I may try to bump him a little bit to get him out, and I keep that angle. So I want to be I want to be very cognizant of that angle and keep that angle. If he is successful at backing away, as I'm coming through from here, I can't get underneath. I see I don't have that same leverage that I had with the hand or with his arm at an angle, so I can't really come through here, but I can throw the arm by. Another point that's crucial is when Colby does tie up with me, again, presuming I wasn't able to beat him to the punch and make this more difficult for him to secure, so he's got a good grip here. It's important as I'm working my position that I don't have my head down, because I'll get attacked there. And it's also important that I keep my position, okay, that good athletic stance or that good wrestling position. So if he does try to push into me, I'm going to step in. Remember, just like we talked about in the first module, I don't always have to set up. If I'm in my good position here, and my head is up, my hips are in proper position, I have some alignment here that's favorable. If Colby hits me down here hard, and I'm able to step in, there's a good chance that I'll score. So if I'm in here, as long as I'm maintaining position, I'm okay. But if Colby has my head and I get sloppy down here, I get beat. And so it's critical to maintain your wrestling posture, your stance, appropriately as you're working through these type of defensive maneuvers. If your opponent has you in a collar tie with both hands or a double collar tie, he's got much more control. At this point, this is unlikely to work. And what I'll need to do is first keep my position as best I can, and then next, what I want to do is I want to give a quick pop to his elbow, lower part of his bicep area, and as I do that, I'm going to get a little space, and I want to bring my shoulder down and come in on an underhook to here. And I want to keep my head right at his neck, from the shoulder up to his neck. Colby's got a double collar tie. You know, if I could do this, I'd try, but realistically, that's not going to be a very effective technique if he's got control on this side. So what I need to do is I need to maintain my posture and my position. I'm going to pop at the elbow. At the same time, I'm going to slide my shoulder down, because if I just pop at the elbow and drive it against my shoulder, I can't get underneath. But if as I pop, the shoulder comes down, I can come in for my underhook. So as I pop, the shoulder comes down. So as I pop, the shoulder comes down so I can get this shoulder inside, and then I come in to my underhook. Colby has me in here fairly tight. I'm going to pop and come through from this position.